The metallic echo of oxygen flowing through the regulator was the only sound Marcus Sullivan could hear at a depth of 45 meters in Lake Tahoe. At 42, with more than 2 decades of diving experience, he knew every rock and depression in the lake like the back of his hand. What he didn't expect was that, during a routine environmental cleanup operation, his metal detector would reveal much more than the usual soda cans and lost hooks. The device began to emit more intense signals as it approached an area partially covered by sediment. Through the crystal-clear water characteristic of Lake Tahoe, Marcus distinguished the rectangular outline of something that definitely didn't belong in that natural environment. His mind immediately went back to the stories his father used to tell about the lake's connections with the mafia in the 70s and 80s. With precise and careful movements, Marcus began to remove the layer of sediment that covered the object. His fingers, protected by neoprene gloves, touched a cold, corroded metal surface. It was undoubtedly a safe, and not a small model for domestic use, but something that would belong in an office or institution. As he worked to free the safe, his mind wandered to Regina Morrison, the coordinator of the lake cleanup project. She had insisted that they document every stage of the operations, and Marcus had never been happier to have followed protocol. The GoPro camera attached to his helmet recorded every moment of this extraordinary discovery. On the surface, Regina waited in the support boat, monitoring Marcus' vital signs and dive time using the equipment. At 38, she has dedicated her life to environmental conservation, transforming the trauma of seeing her family lose everything in childhood into a mission to protect natural resources from predatory and corrupt practices. Diver's base. Everything okay down there, Marcus? Regina's voice sounded through the underwater communicator. Positive, replied Marcus, his voice slightly distorted by the equipment. Regina, you won't believe what I've found. I'm going to need help to bring it to the surface. 40 minutes later, after a complex operation involving cables and floats, the soggy chest was resting on the deck of the boat. Regina looked at the object with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The corrosion marks revealed decades of submergence, but what most caught her eye was the partially visible logo on the side, Central Bank of Nevada, Tahoe Branch. That's... Regina paused, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the vault's oxidized surface. Marcus, that bank, that's exactly where the scandal that destroyed my family began. Marcus knew fragments of the story. In 1993, Regina's father, Robert Morrison, was a respected bank accountant who had discovered irregularities in the accounts of some important clients. He tried to blow the whistle internally, but ended up being framed as the mastermind of the fraud. The Morrison family lost everything: their home, their reputation, and most importantly, the chance of a normal life. We need to call the authorities, Marcus said, reaching for his phone. This could be evidence of a crime. Over the next few hours, the shore of Lake Tahoe turned into an investigative scene. The FBI took over the case, and a team specializing in financial crimes was assigned. The safe was carefully transported to a forensic laboratory, where specialized technicians would work to open it without compromising its contents. Special Agent Lauren Patterson, a 45-year-old woman with a background in financial corruption cases, conducted the initial interviews with Marcus and Regina. Her interest was particularly piqued when Regina mentioned the connection with the Morrison case. That case was never fully solved, Lauren commented, consulting her tablet. In fact, there were always suspicions that crucial evidence had mysteriously disappeared during the original investigation. 3 days later, in a special room at the FBI's forensic laboratory in Reno, the safe finally revealed its secrets. Inside, preserved in sealed compartments, were documents, microfilm, and a series of audio tapes. The material, although water-damaged in some parts, contained explosive information about a public embezzlement scheme that stretched across the entire Lake Tahoe region. This changes everything, Lauren declared, examining the documents with latex gloves. We have hard evidence here that Robert Morrison was telling the truth. The real perpetrators of the fraud were members of the bank's own board of directors. Regina sat, stunned, as the implications of this discovery unfolded before her. 30 years of injustice could finally be put right. Her father, who had died 5 years earlier, still carrying the weight of that false accusation. could finally have his name cleared. Marcus watched the scene with a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. A simple day's work on the lake had become the catalyst for a historic turnaround. As Regina struggled to hold back tears, he realized that this discovery was just the beginning of a much longer journey. Agent Patterson closed her briefcase with a determined sigh. "We're officially reopening the Morrison case," she announced. "And this time, we're going to make sure that the truth comes out, no matter who is involved." The sun was beginning to set over Lake Tahoe, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Marcus and Regina remained on the shore long after the FBI teams had left, contemplating how a lake that had kept a secret for so long could finally bring justice to the surface. "You know what's ironic?" Regina said, breaking a long silence. "I spent years working to protect this lake, and now it's protecting my family's memory." Marcus nodded, understanding that some truths, like submerged treasures, just need the right moment to emerge from the depths. The FBI Forensics Lab in Reno was buzzing with activity as specialized teams meticulously worked on the contents of the safe Marcus found. Agent Lauren Patterson was personally coordinating the process of restoring the documents, determined not to miss any detail that could shed light on the Morrison case. "We have something interesting here," announced Kevin Zhang, a specialist in document restoration, carefully lifting a partially deteriorated sheet of paper. It appears to be an internal bank memo dated 1993, signed by Alexander Blackwell, then chairman of the board. Regina, who was following the work at Lauren's invitation, felt her heart race when she heard that name. Alexander Blackwell had been her father's main accuser during the scandal, the man who had appeared all over the local news declaring his deep disappointment with Robert Morrison. "The memo mentions an operation called Project Calm Waters," Jean continued, adjusting his precision glasses. "There are references to systematic transfers to offshore accounts through a network of shell companies." Lauren made quick notes on her tablet. "That matches the pattern Robert Morrison had originally identified. He was following the right path." Marcus, who had decided to take a few days off from his diving job to follow the developments, watched Regina with concern. Each new revelation seemed to hit her like a punch in the gut, reviving painful memories from her childhood. "We need to locate Alexander Blackwell," Lauren declared, turning to her team. "Latest information indicates that he has retired to Palm Springs, California." "You won't have to look very hard," interrupted Regina, her voice trembling slightly. "He maintains an active profile on social media. He's always posting photos of his golf tournaments and charity dinners." The irony didn't escape anyone in the room. While the Morrison family had been destroyed, Blackwell continued to enjoy a luxurious life, possibly built on embezzled money and the stolen reputation of an innocent man. Lauren quickly organized a team to leave for Palm Springs. "Regina, I know this is personal for you, but I need you to keep your distance for now. Any premature contact could jeopardize the investigation." Regina nodded, understanding the logic, even though every fiber of her being screamed for immediate confrontation. Marcus, sensing her distress, offered to drive her home. During the drive, Regina remained silent, lost in her memories. Marcus respected her space, keeping his eyes on the road as they drove through the streets of Reno. Only when they stopped in front of her house did Regina finally speak. "You know what's hardest to accept?" she said, her voice low but firm. "It's not just what they did to my father. It's how it affected every aspect of our lives. My mother has never been the same. We moved 7 times in 5 years, always dodging glances and whispers." Marcus listened attentively as Regina continued. "I was only 8 when it all happened. I remember waking up one night to find my father crying in the kitchen, surrounded by papers. He was trying to understand how they had managed to forge his signature so perfectly. The next morning, Lauren and her team arrived in Palm Springs. The luxurious condominium where Blackwell lived contrasted dramatically with the modest apartment where Regina had grown up after the scandal. When the FBI agents identified themselves at the gate, they were informed that Alexander Blackwell had left hastily the night before, claiming a family emergency. Lauren immediately activated other FBI units to track down his whereabouts. "He's been alerted," Lauren concluded, calling Regina. "Someone at the lab or the bank must have leaked the information about the discovery of the safe. News of Blackwell's escape spread quickly. Journalists began to surround the FBI office in Reno, and old reports about the Morrison case resurfaced in the local media. The story of the diver, who found a safe containing secrets from 3 decades ago, captured the public's imagination. Marcus, watching the media coverage from his home, received an unexpected call. It was an unknown number with a Las Vegas area code. "Mr. Sullivan?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, elderly. "My name is Harold Winters. I used to work at the Central Bank of Nevada in 1993. I think it's time I told you what really happened." The diver felt a shiver run down his spine. He immediately contacted Lauren, who organized a safe meeting with Winters in a discreet FBI office in Las Vegas. The final piece of the puzzle was beginning to fall into place, but no one could have predicted how much darker the truth would be than they had imagined. The Morrison case was about to reveal a web of corruption that stretched far beyond the shores of Lake Tahoe. Harold Winters waited in an FBI meeting room in Las Vegas, his elderly hands shaking slightly as he clutched a cup of coffee. At 78, the former bank employee carried the weight of 3 decades of silence. Lauren Patterson and Marcus Sullivan watched through the mirrored glass, while Regina remained in Reno, connected via secure video conference. "I was the accounting supervisor in 1993, Winters began, his voice laden with remorse. "Robert Morrison came to me first before taking his findings to the board. I should have done more." Lauren turned on the recorder, exchanging a meaningful glance with Marcus. "Why did you decide to speak now, Mr. Winters?" "Because I'm dying," he replied bluntly. "Terminal cancer. I have 3 months, maybe less, and I can't take this with me." The elderly man pulled out an old USB stick from his briefcase, protected in a waterproof case. "This contains backups of the original files that Robert found. I've kept it hidden all these years as life insurance, so to speak." At the computer screen, Regina covered her mouth with her hands, silent tears streaming down her face as Winters continued his narrative. "Project Atlas Calmas wasn't just an embezzlement scheme," he explained. "It was a sophisticated money laundering operation that involved local politicians, businessmen, and even members of organized crime. Alexander Blackwell was just the tip of the iceberg." Lauren took quick notes as Winters revealed an intricate web of corruption that stretched across the entire state of Nevada. Powerful names began to emerge: judges, state legislators, businessmen still active on the local scene. "The choice to frame Robert Morrison was not random," Winters continued. "He was perfect, upstanding, dedicated with no political connections. No one would question him being exposed as the mastermind of the scheme." Marcus looked at the screen where Regina was watching the testimony, noticing how she stood straight, absorbing every word with a mixture of pain and determination. The truth, however painful, was finally coming out. "The safe," Winters hesitated. "It was Alexander who ordered it to be thrown into the lake. He thought that the depth and temperature of the water would destroy the evidence eventually. But Robert, he suspected that something like this might happen." "What do you mean?" asked Lauren, leaning forward. "Robert had a special code for marking important documents, a seemingly random sequence of numbers in the margins of the pages. That's why I kept these backups. He taught me the code days before he was arrested." The revelation caused a stir in the room. Regina, through the screen, let out a muffled sob. Her father, even under intense pressure, had thought ahead, leaving clues for anyone who knew where to look. Over the next few hours, a specialized team from the FBI began decoding the files on the USB stick, cross-referencing information with the documents recovered from the safe. The puzzle began to take shape, revealing a much bigger scheme than anyone had imagined. Lauren received an urgent call from her team in Palm Springs. "We've located Blackwell," she announced. "He tried to board a private flight to the Bahamas. He's in custody." The news spread quickly. In a matter of hours, search and seizure warrants were issued for several addresses in Nevada and neighboring states. The operation that the FBI dubbed Submerged Truth was officially underway. Marcus returned to Reno that evening and found Regina in her apartment. She was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by old family photos and newspaper clippings from the time of the scandal. "Do you know what's most ironic?" she said, showing Marcus a photo in which her father was smiling, holding a trophy for the bank's Employee of the Year. He always said that the truth was like water. It always finds a way. The next day, the country's main newscasts opened with the story. The FBI conducted simultaneous arrests in 3 states, including 2 retired judges and a state senator. The operation turned out to be one of the largest corruption investigations in Nevada history. Harold Winters provided his official testimony, this time before a federal grand jury. His belated courage in revealing the truth would be instrumental in dismantling decades of systemic corruption. Lauren organized a private meeting between Regina and Winters at the FBI office in Reno. The meeting was brief, but significant. The elderly man, visibly shaken by his illness and the weight of his confessions, asked Robert Morrison's daughter for forgiveness. "Your father was an extraordinary man," said Winters, holding Regina's hands. "He chose to do the right thing, even though he knew it could cost him everything. I hope that one day you can forgive me for not having had the same courage." Regina watched the frail man in front of her, realizing that forgiveness was not only a gift she could offer him, but also a release for herself. 3 decades of bitterness were beginning to dissipate, like mist over Lake Tahoe at dawn. The investigation continued to unfold, revealing deeper and deeper layers of corruption and complicity. But for Regina, Marcus, and everyone involved, one thing was clear. Some truths, like submerged treasures, only need the right moment and the right people to surface. The FBI's Submerged Truth operation quickly turned into one of the biggest corruption cases in Nevada's history. Alexander Blackwell, arrested during his attempted escape to the Bahamas, now faced interrogation by Agent Lauren Patterson in an austere room at the Federal Detention Center in Las Vegas. "Mr. Blackwell, your 30 years of golf in Palm Springs are over," Lauren declared, spreading photographs and documents recovered from the safe on the metal table. "We have your signature on every crucial document from Project Calmwaters." The former bank president, once imposing in his Italian suits, looked withered in his orange prison jumpsuit. His eyes, however, still held the calculating glint that Regina remembered from her childhood. "You don't understand the complexity of the situation," Blackwell replied, adjusting his gold-framed glasses. "Nevada's financial system in the 1990s was a minefield. We did what was necessary to maintain stability." In Reno, Marcus accompanied Regina as she rummaged through old boxes in the basement of her house. Among yellowed newspaper clippings and faded photographs, they found a diary that had belonged to his father. The pages contained coded notes which, they now knew, could be the key to uncovering even more ramifications of the scheme. "Look at this." Regina pointed to a series of numbers in the margins. "My father kept a record of everything. He knew that one day someone would need this information." Meanwhile, Harold Winters, working with a specialized FBI team, was methodically decoding the files on the USB stick. Each new revelation exposed deeper connections between politicians, businessmen, and organized crime figures. The transfers weren't just to accounts in the Bahamas, Winters explained, his voice weak but determined. They created an intricate network involving casinos in Las Vegas, real estate developments in Lake Tahoe, and even infrastructure projects in Carson City. Lauren coordinated teams in 3 different states, connecting the dots that linked decades of systematic corruption. The Morrison case had only been the tip of the iceberg, a calculated sacrifice to protect a much larger scheme. "We need your help, Regina," Lauren said during a secure video conference. "Your father left clues in the documents that only someone close to him could recognize. Patterns, family references, anything that can help us crack the whole code." Regina spent the next few days immersed in memories of her childhood, recalling conversations with her father, inside jokes, special places they visited. Marcus remained by her side, offering not only emotional support, but also his unique perspective as someone who knew every inch of Lake Tahoe. "Did your father mention specific places on the lake?" asked Marcus, studying an old map found among Robert Morrison's belongings. "He used to take me fishing in a specific cove," Regina replied, her eyes lighting up with the memory. "He said it was our secret corner because the waters there were calmer." "Calm waters," Marcus repeated, a sudden realization hitting him. The name of the project wasn't random. They could have used that area for more operations. A new search was organized in the cove mentioned by Regina. Marcus, leading a team of FBI divers, discovered the remains of old underwater communications equipment, evidence that the site had been used for clandestine operations. In Las Vegas, Blackwell finally began to crack under the pressure of interrogation and accumulated evidence. Robert Morrison wasn't the only one threatening to expose the operation, he confessed. There were others. Some disappeared. Others were persuaded to keep quiet. Blackwell's confession opened up a new front in the investigation. Lauren assigned a team to investigate unsolved cases of disappearances and suspicious deaths in the region during the 80s and 90s. Regina, reviewing her father's files with fresh eyes, found patterns in the notes that pointed to specific dates and locations. He wasn't just documenting financial transactions, she realized. He was mapping out an entire conspiracy. Harold Winters, though weakened by illness, continued to cooperate. His revelations led to the location of more documents hidden in an old warehouse in Carson City. Among them, evidence directly linking 3 retired federal judges to the scheme. "Your father was smarter than we imagined," Winters told Regina during one of their work sessions. "He built a puzzle that could only be put together when all the right pieces were assembled and when the right people were involved." Marcus, watching Regina work tirelessly to unravel the codes left by her father, realized that Lake Tahoe had been more than just a discovery site. It was a central character in this story of delayed justice. As more arrests were made and more evidence emerged, it became clear that the Morrison case would not just be solved. It was unleashing an unprecedented cleanup of Nevada's financial and judicial system. Some truths, Regina reflected, looking out of the FBI office window towards the calm waters of Lake Tahoe, need time to emerge. Like a treasure kept in the depths, waiting for the right moment to surface. The investigation continued, and with each new revelation, the memory of Robert Morrison grew stronger. No longer as the villain of the story, but as the silent hero who had planted the seeds of truth, knowing that one day they would sprout. The federal prosecutor's office in Carson City was buzzing with activity as Operation Submerged Truth entered its most crucial phase. Lauren Patterson was coordinating the organization of evidence for what promised to be one of the biggest trials in Nevada history. On the walls of the makeshift war room, huge panels displayed photos and documents connected by colored lines, mapping 3 decades of corruption. "We have more than 50 witnesses willing to testify," Lauren informed her team, pointing to a list of names. After Blackwell started talking, it was like a dam broke. Regina, who had become an official consultant to the investigation, worked tirelessly on decoding the last documents found in her father's diary. Marcus, always nearby, noticed the glint of determination in her eyes, the same that Robert Morrison showed in the old photographs. "I've found something," Regina announced, her voice trembling slightly. "These coordinates in my father's diary, they point to specific locations throughout the Lake Tahoe region. They're not just random spots. They're properties acquired with laundered money." Harold Winters, connected via video call from his hospital bed, confirmed the discovery. Robert mapped out the entire real estate operation. They were buying land for derisory prices, using inside information about future development projects. The investigation revealed a frightening pattern. Politicians approved changes to the zoning of specific areas, while shell companies controlled by Blackwell's group acquired the properties before the information became public. The value of the land multiplied exponentially after the official announcements. Marcus, using his experience with the lake, organized a series of strategic dives at the points indicated by Regina. At each location, the team found more evidence, from abandoned communications equipment to documents sealed in waterproof containers. They used the lake as a safe, Marcus explained during a strategy meeting. The depth and temperature of the water preserved much more than they imagined. Lauren received an urgent phone call that changed the course of the investigation. "They've just found Judge Harrison's body," she announced, her face grave. "Apparently a suicide at his home in Reno." Harrison was one of the retired judges implicated in the scheme. His death raised immediate suspicions, especially considering the timing. A search of his home revealed a detailed letter confessing his involvement and naming other participants in the scheme. "This isn't suicide," Regina declared, examining the judge's latest text messages. He was planning a date with his grandchildren for the weekend. People who plan to kill themselves don't do that. Regina's suspicion was proved correct when the autopsy revealed traces of a rare and hard-to-detect substance. The murder of Judge Harrison added a new layer of urgency to the investigation. "They're eliminating witnesses," Lauren concluded. "We need to act fast." In a coordinated operation involving federal agencies from 5 states, dozens of arrest warrants were served simultaneously. Prominent businessmen, politicians, and even a local TV presenter were arrested. Regina watched the news from her home, with Marcus by her side, as the arrests dominated national coverage. 30 years of injustice were beginning to be undone, but the emotional toll was palpable. "My father knew this would happen one day," she said, holding up an old photo of Robert Morrison smiling at a family picnic. "That's why he left so many clues." It wasn't just about proving his innocence, it was about exposing the whole corrupt system. Harold Winters, even as he faced his final days, continued to contribute crucial information. His formal statement was recorded on video, ensuring that his confession would be preserved for the trial. "The system wasn't just broken," Winters explained during his statement. "It was deliberately designed to benefit a select group at the expense of honest people like Robert Morrison." Lauren organized a special task force to protect key witnesses, determined not to lose anyone else like Judge Harrison. The conspiracy to silence witnesses became a parallel focus of the investigation. As more evidence was processed, Robert Morrison's role as the initial whistleblower took on a new perspective. His courage in standing up to the system, even knowing the risks, inspired others to speak out. "Your father didn't die in vain," Marcus told Regina as they walked along the shore of Lake Tahoe. "He planted the seeds of truth, and now they are finally blossoming." Operation Submerged Truth was about to enter its final phase, with the first trial set to begin soon. The truth, like the waters of Lake Tahoe, had preserved its secrets until the right moment to reveal them to the world. The federal courthouse in Carson City was packed the morning the Nevada trial of the century began. Alexander Blackwell and 12 other defendants occupied a row of chairs in front of federal judge Martin Coleman, newly assigned from Washington, D.C. to ensure the impartiality of the proceedings. Regina Morrison sat in the front row next to Marcus Sullivan, their hands intertwined, seeking mutual strength. Across the aisle, Lauren Patterson was organizing her final notes, preparing to present the case that had consumed the last months of her career. "The state calls Harold Winters as its first witness," announced federal prosecutor Richard Chen. With the help of a nurse, Winters was led to the witness chair. His face, although pale from illness, emanated a serenity that came from the certainty that he was finally doing the right thing. "Mr. Winters, please tell the jury about the morning of March 15th, 1993, Chen requested. Over the next 2 hours, Winters unfolded a detailed narrative of how Project Calm Waters was conceived and executed. His voice, though weak, carried the weight of the long-suppressed truth. Robert Morrison was not just a competent accountant, Winters testified. He was the only person brave enough to stand up to the system, and for that, they systematically destroyed him. In the gallery, Regina wiped away silent tears as she listened to the testimony that finally cleared her father's name. Marcus held her hand tighter, offering silent support. The trial stretched on for 6 intense weeks. Lauren presented evidence after evidence, including the documents recovered from the submerged safe, the decoded files from Winters' flash drive, and testimony from dozens of witnesses who finally felt safe to speak. "What we see here," Lauren argued in her closing speech, "is not just a case of financial fraud. It's the story of how a group of powerful people conspired to destroy an honest man and his family, all to protect their criminal scheme." Judge Harrison's death was also presented as evidence of the lengths to which the conspirators were willing to go to keep their secrets. Toxicology analysis had confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt that his death was homicide. During a break in the trial, Marcus found Regina in the courthouse garden, gazing at the snow-capped mountains in the distance. "Your father would be proud," he said softly. "Do you know what's most ironic?" Regina replied, a small smile forming on her lips. All this time working to protect Lake Tahoe, and in the end it was the lake itself that helped us achieve justice. The verdict was announced on a Thursday afternoon. The jury took just 6 hours to reach its unanimous decision. Guilty on all counts. Blackwell and his co-conspirators would face decades in prison. But beyond the criminal convictions, the case triggered a series of reforms in Nevada's financial and judicial system. The governor signed an executive order establishing a permanent banking oversight commission, aptly named the Morrison Commission. Harold Winters did not live to see the end of the trial. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days after his testimony, having accomplished his last mission of revealing the truth. In his memory and that of Robert Morrison, the FBI established a whistleblower protection program, ensuring that future whistleblowers would have the support they needed to confront corrupt systems. A week after the verdict, Marcus and Regina returned to the exact spot where the safe had been found. On board a small boat, under the soft evening sun, they held a small ceremony. To Robert Morrison, Marcus raised a bottle of champagne, the man who never stopped believing in the truth. Regina threw a bouquet of flowers into the water, watching the petals scatter over the crystal-clear surface of the lake. To Harold Winters, she added, who found his redemption in the end. Lauren Patterson, who had joined them for the occasion, added, and for Lake Tahoe, the silent keeper of secrets who chose the right moment to reveal them. Investigations continued to uncover ramifications of the scheme in other states, but the heart of the story, the vindication of Robert Morrison, was complete. His photo was reinstalled in the bank's Hall of Honor, now under new management, with a commemorative plaque recognizing his role as guardian of integrity. Regina took charge of the Lake Tahoe Preservation Project with a new perspective. Each cleanup dive now carried a special meaning, a reminder of how truth, like submerged treasures, sometimes needs time and perseverance to emerge. Marcus continued his diving work, but was now training a new generation of divers, teaching them not only about techniques and safety, but also about the importance of being aware of what the depths can reveal. Lake Tahoe, as majestic and serene as ever, continued its role as silent guardian. Its crystalline waters, which for so long had held the secrets of a conspiracy, now reflected a story of redemption, justice, and the unshakable force of truth. And somewhere, in the depths of those blue waters, other secrets were waiting for their moment to surface, ready to tell their own stories when the time was right.